Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to Global Power Platform Bootcamp 2020. In today's session, I'm going to show you how you can extend your business applications with Fusion development. So, once again, a massive thanks to our sponsors, both Mohimbi and Rapid Circle, and a special thanks to Pune Tech community as well for our organizing this event. So, my name is Clavin. I'm a Microsoft Business Applications MVP. I'm also a cloud consultant at Rapid Circle. I'm a technical evangelist at Mohimbi Limited. I'm also a Power Automate super user. I like to share my knowledge on my blog that is clavinfernandes.wordpress.com. I also run a YouTube channel in the hopes that I can go ahead and help other power users. You can find my social handle at the right hand of the screen. So, what is the agenda for today? First and foremost, we'll see what is Fusion development. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Clavin, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear, right? Okay. So, what is Fusion development? What is no code or low code versus pro code? What are connectors and how can connectors go ahead and help you? So, firstly, what is Fusion development? When two teams come together, there is a fusion. So, two teams out here would be the citizen developers and the professional developers. So it is citizen developers are the developers who go ahead and write low code, such as Power Effects or expressions. And professional developers are developers who write code in a programming language such as C Sharp or maybe ASP.NET or maybe even JavaScript. So these two teams come together, they are called as a fusion development team. So recently there was a survey, and every business application teams, at least 80% of them at least have one Fusion developer or one professional developer who can go ahead and help other citizen developers. So to understand that, we first need to understand how do citizen developers go ahead and work and how do pro developers go ahead and work. So when it comes to citizen developers, they are mostly business users. And when it comes to pro developers, they are actual developers who have got a lot of programming background. Now, when I say low code is Power FX and Power Automate expression. When I say pro code, it is JavaScript, ASP.NET, even Azure functions, anything that is related to coding. Then again to low code, who are the people who go ahead and use low code? They are business users. They don't have any knowledge of programming, but still can go ahead and create applications. And that is the beauty of Power Platform. Pro code, they know Power Platform a little, but they also know a lot of programming languages. Next, as I told you, there was a survey. There's another survey out here. 80% of the people in your organization are not from IT background. And those are the people who we target low code for. Recently, I was working with an organization and they actually went ahead and rolled out Power Platform for a whole department. Just told them, go ahead and play with it. Go ahead and get your ideas out. See what you can automate. And they did an excellent thing. Now, only 20% are pro developers. This is the core IT team, right? Pro code means the IT team. So these are professional developers. Now, what do low code developers do? They go ahead and build Power Apps and Power Automate. What do pro developers do? They build PCF functions or custom connectors and so on. So when I talk about fusion development, let's not just think it's all about custom connectors. Okay. Although this is about custom connector, another topic maybe in the future we can do about PCF. How Power Apps component can go ahead and help fusion development as well. That's core related to Power Apps. But yeah, that's another thing. But let's come back to custom connectors. So what is a custom connector? A custom connector is a wrapper around your code or a REST API that allows you to be used in Power Apps or Power Automate. So basically, custom connector is something that you see in green. There's code behind it, which is hosted maybe in Azure or maybe even in a Power Automate or maybe in another API service. And the custom connector basically wraps up the code and exposes the API in the front end. One important topic we need to understand: connectors versus connection. So we already know what connectors are. They are a wrapper. What is a connection? A connection is known to be basically providing credentials. Now, when I say credentials, people might get confused out here and might be thinking username, password, API key. But even if you go ahead and specify no authentication in your Power Apps, remember you still need to create a connection because Power App has to, or Power Automate has to go ahead and use it. So what about custom connectors? We are going to focus on two main custom connectors out here. One is the custom code connector, which comes out of the box. And then we will go ahead and look at the Azure product as well, maybe an Azure function. So I think that's it. Now I'll not talk more and let's get into the demos. Any questions till now? Nandeep, you can shout it out if they have any questions.
Sure, at least no questions so far. But if there is any, I will. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So when I talk about custom code connectors, right? Custom code connectors in our case will be working within the context of Power Automate. Okay. I'm not going to leave Power Automate and I'm going to create a custom connector to go ahead and automate a task. Now, when I say this, people will say, Clavin, what are you talking about? Let's not go ahead and talk or confuse people more. And let me just go ahead and just tell you a scenario where this came from. Recently, I was working with a company. The company went ahead and told me, Clavin, and they are recently migrated from on-premise to online, right? So they don't have Azure, but they still want to go ahead and came across a scenario or stumbled across a scenario. The scenario was this: they had long string text, and those text strings had got emails, and extracting emails from a text string can be intimidating at times in Power Automate. So what they told me, Clavin, do you have a solution in Power Automate which can go ahead and extract text? So I was like, yeah, maybe we can use a third party. But they said, no, Clavin, don't go ahead and use a third party. Maybe I said, okay, maybe use Azure. They said, no, Azure. We are not going to invest more. We are just migrated. What can Power Automate provide out of the box? Then I went to the Power Automate portal. I clicked on data and I clicked on custom connector. So why do we go ahead and create a custom connector? Because there's something not possible out of the box, right? Don't create a custom connector for an action that is already available or can be done with expressions. In this scenario, we want to extract emails from a long string, and that's not possible. There's no out of box action. So we are going to create a custom connector out here. So when I create a custom connector, I get many options. One is create from blank, create from Azure service, which is in preview, import from an API file, Postman collection, GitHub, etc., etc. But for this demo, let's create one from blank. Okay, I'll just give it a good name, extract demo, BPP, and I'll say continue. So whenever you create a custom connector, the first page that you stumble across is this particular screen. In this particular screen, you can go ahead and give your custom connector an image. It's always good to give your custom connector an image, and this is my image. So it will be easily distinguishable when we go ahead and use it in our Power Automate. Go ahead and give a good description. We can say extract string, give it an endpoint. Now, in our case, just remember one thing: our custom code connector is not going to go ahead and leave the context of Power Apps or Power Automate. Everything is going to happen within the context of Power Automate. Okay. So no need of Azure or anything. So next comes the security. Now I told you it's nothing is going outside the context of Power Automate, so we can leave the security as default. However, when we go ahead and ask However, when there's an authentication type, you might want to go ahead and specify API key, basic, etc. if you're going ahead and querying an external service, for example, an Azure function. In that case, the default would be the API key. But for this demo, let's leave it at no authentication. Definition. Now, this is interesting. Now, definition is actually a Swagger file. So what is a Swagger file? The Swagger file is basically used to go ahead and create a wrapper across your code or across your API. Now, when I say that, you need to understand basics of a Swagger if you are a developer, but if you are professional or if you are a citizen developer, you don't really need to understand it. So basically, if you look at the basic structure of Swagger, you will first have the Open API version, which is on the top. With Power Automate, it's 2.0, Swagger is supported. The information about the API servers, we are not going to work with servers because if you see, our servers are inside, it works within the context of Power Automate. Then we have a path. Under the path, you have an endpoint, and under the endpoint, you have a method. Under the method, you have responses, and under responses, you will have the request. Now, when I say that, I'm not going to spend a lot of time out here because we need to go ahead and author a Swagger. Now, to author a Swagger, what we need to do is that we need to create a connection. So I can just let me just copy this. Let me just copy the description. Let's say one time. The most important piece out here is the operation ID. The operation ID is basically set to be where your code will go ahead and bind. So when I say the code will be binded, this, for example, this is where the code will be binded. So let me go ahead and just put in extract email and the visibility. So the visibility, I went to this pane for a reason. Now, if you have an asterisk, the visibility is important, right? If you have advanced, this is what the advanced visibility option does out here. If you put in advanced, those actions will be hidden. And whenever you click on this button, that will be visible. Now, when I say important, I already told asterisk, then internal, it will not be visible. Advanced is, as I told you, when we set it to none, it will be presented by default. Now, when I go ahead and create a request, now I need to create a request body. So what will be our request body? I'm going to send the request. So basically, I can give it any URL. It does not matter, but I'll just say extract email. I'll leave the headers as it is, and I'll create a body. So what I need to pass in, I need to go ahead and pass in a text which I can scrape, right? So the text I'm going to pass in is something like this. And I'm just going to put in double quotes, and I'll click on import. So our action is created. Response. Let's go ahead and take the whole response body. So I'll say default response, and maybe I want to return the whole body. So I'm returning the whole body itself. So if I go to the Swagger editor, now if you see, Power Automate or the Power Apps GUI has created the Swagger for us. I did not need to understand Swagger really, but it's good to understand Swagger. Always remember that, especially if you are a professional developer. So as I told you, the version of Swagger is 2.0. That's the one that is supported by Power Automate and Power Apps or Power Platform. Then you have the information about the Swagger, you have the host, you have the endpoints, you have the post. The most important part is the operation ID. It's out here. Now, you know the Swagger is valid because there are no errors in it. If you have errors in a Swagger, you will go ahead and see red text at the right hand of the screen. Now, once I go ahead and create a Swagger, the next is custom code connector. And my friends, this is where the real magic happens. So when I say real magic happens, I need to enable it for the magic to kick in, and I'm going to bind it. So this is the operation ID that I went ahead and specified. I'll just select it. Now, when I go ahead and talk about custom code connectors, it's very important to understand the basics before we get into it. So I'll just open an article, and out here you see this is the article written by Microsoft, and it's an excellent article, trust me. If you just go through this article, you will get to know everything when it comes to custom code connector, which is out of the box. So first things first, what are the supporting classes? One of the supporting classes that we will be using is the context. Context is used to go ahead and get the request body from the Swagger file. Okay, that's one of the reasons. Then maybe we can use the operation ID. For example, compare the operation ID and then go to the script that is required. Then there are a few examples, hello world, regular expression, etc. Now, what was our use case? If you remember, our use case was to extract emails from a string. So what I'll do is extract emails from string. I'll just Google it. The first thing that comes is extract email using regular expressions. And if you see, even out here, we have a regular expression example. Now, this particular example, if you see, goes ahead and returns true and false. Okay. It does not go ahead and give us a string back, but we can create our own example out here. Next, what is very important is the namespaces. You need to work with these namespaces itself. Don't go ahead and use a namespace for a third party and expect it to work. No, it's not going to work. We will address that, but maybe in the later part of the demos where we look at Azure functions, right? So this is the script. This is the basic hello world example. Now, I as a citizen developer went to a professional developer and he gave me a code snippet, right? Now, my work is to implement that code snippet. So I have the code snippet on a different screen, so you might not see it, but I'm going to paste line by line. So first and foremost, as I told you, I'm going to use the context dot request to get the whole content body. Once I have the content body, what I'm going to do, first I'll make some space out here so that we can easily distinguish on what I'm pasting and what I'm not. Maybe I will increase my, oh, it's too much. I think it's moving out of the screen. So this is good enough. Nandeep, you can see the screen, right? And read the
Yes.
text.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Definitely. Yes.
Perfect. So next, what I want to do is I got the content as string. Now, if you remember, we went ahead and implemented in the JSON, in the Swagger, a JSON body. So it's going to return us a J object, and we are going to go ahead and pass the JSON object and store it into a variable. Now, that variable will be known as content as JSON. Now, the whole JSON body is there, but what I want is the text to scrape. So what I say, okay, you got the whole JSON body. Now just get the text to scrape variable. Now I have the text to scrape variable. Now I go back again to Google and maybe I check what is the regular expression to extract emails. There are a few examples out here. I can simply copy paste it. Don't simply copy paste it. Go ahead and look for the best example, which will go ahead and give you a best result. But if you see, this is a regular expression I want to go ahead and use. So I have copied it already and I'm going to use regular expression, which looks something like this. So regular expression, this is the regular expression to match emails. So email matching regular expression is done. Right now we have the regular expression. Now it's my string can contain one email or multiple emails. For that, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a list. A list will go ahead and help me build a string of email addresses, right? That's what it is. Now, once I have the string with me, what I'm going to do, I'm going to match the email addresses and I'm going to go ahead and store it in a variable. As simple as that. Now, whatever I'm telling you is a code copied from the article that is out there, the Stack Overflow. I am not writing code out here. Just trust me, okay? So you will find a good sample for your scenario out there in the community. So go ahead and do your research and come here and go ahead and try to paste your things. Right now, I have the string. Now, what I want to do. Now, this will return me an object because it's a type list. So I want to go ahead and create a single string using join. Once I have this, I can go ahead and simply return the response. Now, if you remember, I am not returning the response as JSON. I'm returning the whole body. Now, if I'm returning the whole body, I cannot go ahead and create JSON content. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a string content, something like this. And what I'm going to return, I'm going to return the combined string, which is out here. Now, this is all. This is my code, right? And this is what I'm going to use in my Power Automate to extract emails. So I'll just click on create custom connector, right? So this might take time. It really depends. If you're lucky, it will go ahead and do it in one shot. If you're not, then it might take a minute, 2 minutes, or even more. Now, okay, it's cool. It gave me an error. Now, the error is something like this. On line number, script CS53, blah, blah, blah. I'm going ahead and expecting something. Okay, I cannot convert string. So I think I messed up here in a copy paste. So whenever you go ahead and do a copy from somewhere, make sure that you go ahead and validate your code and just not blindly. The reason I induced this error, or the reason this error came up, which was good, is because it's not easy to debug in this particular pane. People always go ahead and ask me, Clavin, can I debug code out here? The answer is no, right? So be careful, maybe create a console app upfront and then go ahead and use it. So while this is getting saved, let me move this to another screen so that I can look at it if it saves or if it gives me an error. In the meantime, let's get back to the article that we were referencing. So as I told you, you have to work only with these namespaces. If there's a third party namespace, no, it will not work. What about few FAQs? Let's go through the FAQs as well. One of the FAQ is that only one script is supported. Only one, not more than one, right? Secondly, what exactly I'm getting internal server errors while updating the connector. So most probably it is basically by compiling. So Microsoft tells go if you know that your code is good, maybe resave it and then just go ahead and try again. And Microsoft is indeed working on having a better erroring or showing better errors out here. Okay. When I say that, even the error that we saw was a little bit confusing, 53, etc., etc. But no, Microsoft in future will go ahead and work out something better for us. When I can I add logging? No. Currently, you cannot add console.logs or so on in this particular thing. How do I test my code? Create a console application. That's what I do. I see if my code goes ahead and runs. And very important, the code should run within 5 seconds and the code size should be below 1 MB, right? So that's another thing that you need to remember. Then what next? Uh, if you're using an HTTP, I say no, don't use this. Better use an HTTP action. So this has been saved. So I'll move it back here. And the next thing is that I can go ahead and click on test. So I spoke about connections and connectors, right? Connections and connectors. Uh, but in this case, we created no authentication, but still we need to create a connection. So that is what I was referring to. Connection is very important for Power Apps, Power Automate in the context of the connector. Just remember that. So connections is being created. Only if you create a connection, you can go ahead and test it. So I'll just paste in something like this and maybe I'll put in an email in between. I'm just randomly putting in, maybe my code works or maybe my code does not work. I don't know. So maybe fingers crossed. Let me put two emails, by the way. One is my email and one is maybe my baby's email. So davin@gmail.com and click on test. Okay, it gave me an error. If you remember, Microsoft said maybe it can have errors while compiling the code, and it usually happens the first time. I clicked on test again, and here, my friends, I have a result. Isn't this awesome? You have written your first custom code connector without using Azure or maybe even Azure Automation, etc. So let's go back and let's see it in action in Power Automate. So what I'm going to do is I'm creating a new flow because I also want to show you the GUI in Power Automate, how it works. So create, and when I create it, you can go to custom block and here you see this is my picture. So it's easily identifiable. It's the action. If you see it's creating a connection altogether, what I can do is that to save up some time, I can just paste this in and maybe add another email. So maybe I'll say, I'll just type in something kiran@gmail.com and I'll just click on save, right? So any questions till now while this is getting saved?
No, nothing as of now onto the chat window.
Okay, perfect. So it seems that I'm doing a good work explaining, so there are no
Yeah.
questions. So, anyways, it's one thing that we need to understand. This feature is in preview. So, any person who is going to go gagas with it, just go ahead and I need to go ahead and tell you this is in preview. So, you can go ahead and do a POC out of it, but don't go ahead and put it in production right away. Okay, for some reason, it's failing. Okay, it's failing because it's of type object. So, let me go ahead and show you an example which I have already created. It will just go ahead and show you one thing, that is how my custom connector works. So this is the action, and when I pass this as a string and I click on test, because what really happens out here when I'm returning the whole object, I had to return it as a string. But if you see, this is how it works. I passed in one email address in the definition, and in the definition, I have a YAML. Okay, so means in the text, I have something like an YAML, random text, and then I'm going ahead and getting the email out of it. Now, what is the error that you might ask? The error is actually in the definition. The definition, actually, I needed to define the whole body. The whole body did not came through. I'm going to share the code, so don't worry. You are going to go ahead. I'll point you to my GitHub sample, and you can go ahead and test it for yourself. But this is the idea or a gist of the first custom connector that you want to create. Now, let's move on to the next topic. Now, you can do this, it's good, but there are limitations, right? Only few out of the box namespaces are being used. And if I talk about namespaces, if I want to do more with respect to the namespaces, what can I do? The answer is, if you want to do more, if your code takes more than 5 minutes, not 5 minutes, more than 5 seconds, then maybe you can just go ahead and create an Azure function and create a custom connector. So the second easiest type or the way to create a custom connector is using Azure, right? So I'll just click on Azure Functions. I'll click on Next, and I'll create an Azure function. I'll give it a name, so bear with me. So I want to keep the naming convention standard, because or else we will stumble across an error and then it will be very difficult for me to go ahead and troubleshoot it during live sessions. So I'll just say maybe the project name is function app. That's fine. Let me just, yeah, this is very important. Now, when you go ahead and create an Azure function, you need to go ahead and use HTTP with OpenAPI. Now, when I say that, it's very important that it works only with .NET Core, right? So you need to have some programming language experience with .NET Core, or at least with C Sharp. Once you have that with you, it's very easy for you to go ahead and create something like this. Now, when you create an Azure functions, the first one, two, three, four, five lines are related to the Swagger. Now, when I say it's related to the Swagger, you need to go ahead and understand one thing. Few things you will see are like operation ID. Operation ID is something that we already saw. That is how the code binds. In our case, our code will go ahead and bind to the run. It's known as run. We'll not change it for now. You could have given a custom operation ID as well. A second thing, input parameters, is you can specify it here. So the input parameter that I'm going to pass is text to scrape. Let's keep it very easy. This is where you can specify the authentication type. If we are using function key or the API key, I'm going to comment it for now, because first I want to go ahead and run it on my local workbench. Next, what I can do is, let me go to the right. Okay, this all looks okay. We don't have to change these things because this is okay. And this is the response. Yeah, response body. So we are going ahead and returning the whole body as text. So once you go ahead and configure the top part, or your Swagger is being created. Okay, Swagger is being created. And did you create the Swagger? No. This particular Azure function or Visual Studio will go ahead and compile and return a Swagger file for you. Now, once you are in the Swagger file, you go into a method. The method is .run. That is, what is that? That's the operation ID. So basically, I go ahead and query the whole body, right? I query the whole body out here. Something similar to that we did in our function, in our example with custom code connector. So I'll say string text to scrape, right? So I need to change this line of code. Let me to this line of code. So basically what I'm doing, I'm going ahead and instead of getting the name, I need to get text to script, correct? So I'm storing it into a string variable. Next what? So it's going to return me the whole body, and it's going to be an async call. So it's going to return the whole body. That is fine. Once I get the whole body, what it's going to do is that it's going to go ahead and deserialize or pass the JSON. So passing the JSON can be done using the line 32 out here. Next, for line 33, we don't have name anymore, so we need to put it, we need to put it text to scrape. So let me go ahead and quickly copy it from my clipboard and let me paste it. So you'll say, Clavin, why are you pasting code? Why are you not typing? Because first, we will run out of time if I go ahead and type. And I have fat fingers. I always mess up the code when I start to type. Okay, so that's another thing. And the idea here is to show how Fusion development might work. Maybe you are a developer, you are helping someone, maybe you pass the code to him, or maybe you write the code and deploy it, and maybe the end user just goes ahead and uses it. Finally, this thing we do not need because we are not going to return the response in, we are just not going to do a hello world example saying that hello name, right? So we are going to do a regular expression example. So I'll just copy the exact same regular expression that I had in my previous example, the same code, and I'll paste it in. So regular expression, match, list, etc., etc. Now this is repetitive, so I can just get rid of this. And here, what I can do is that, let me go ahead and add the namespaces. Come on. Okay. Fat fingers, I told you. So bear with me. So first was the namespace for regular expression, and the second is collection for the list. Now, if you see, my friends, I have no error. Now, this is it. You have deployed your function, right? I hope that people have created function in the past, right? So just having a .NET Core, and .NET Core is very, very similar to C sharp. So you can find many code samples out there on the internet to do many things. Now, this is just setting a, I'm just going ahead and giving you an example with regular expression, but the power is more. I'm going to show you in the later, right? So let me just go ahead and run it. So this will open an emulator for me. And in the emulator, I'll go ahead and see few URLs. The URLs are very important. One of the important URL is the last one because that exposes the Swagger UI, right? So let me hunt for a browser, or let me just open a browser. Yeah. So let me go ahead and change this to this. Now, if you see, a Swagger is being created. Now, where is the Swagger? This is the Swagger UI. So this is the Swagger. If you see, the Swagger is created in 2.0, so it's out of the box supported with Power Platform, which is absolutely awesome. Now I'll click on get, and here I can pass in a string, right? I can say try it out. I can go ahead and pass a string such as, maybe I'll just copy something and put in an email in between. And then click on execute, right? So what it did, within a fraction of a second, I got a response 200. Same thing, but with Azure Functions. Now, why am I showing you this? Because the first action or the first thing was in preview. So maybe if you want to do it in production, do it this way. It's much easier, right? If it's a one-time process, for example, I had a scenario where I was converting XMLs to HTML. I have a video posted on my YouTube channel. In that case, what I did is that bulk operation, I took the risk. I went ahead and did the XML to HTML conversion using custom code connector, not Azure connector, and it worked, right? But if it's going to be production, stay away from it. The first option. But it's good to know new technologies. So this is your custom connector, and once you have the custom connector created from the function, what you can do is that you can stop. You can right click here and you can simply click on publish, right? And when I click on publish, I can click on next. If I go to my Azure portal, let me see if I have a function already deployed because it will save me some time. So I have a function out here. Maybe I'll deploy it to this slot itself. So let me click on next. That was automation test, if I'm correct. Um, yeah, it was an automation resource group. So I'll just select that. This is it. Next. Now, at this point, I can deploy to an API management, right? The benefit of deploying to an API management is that it will directly be available under your connectors pain. But as of now, let's skip it. But this is very good. So maybe there are many videos by Justin Wu out here, out on the internet, which actually explains this. So you can have a look at it. And at this point, I can hit publish. So this is getting published. I hope there are no questions till now because Nandeep has not. Nandeep, any questions?
No, nothing so far. Going great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So it's deployed, I guess. No, it's publishing. So while it's getting published, let me come to another scenario out here, which we are going to take. Whenever I say that, it gets published, maybe. So that's what I want it to happen. So when I was working for, I'm still working for Rapid Circle and Mohimbi. So not was is I had a customer who wanted to use our on-premises service. So as Nandeep said, we have both on-premise and online. In the on-premise, we actually go ahead and expose SOAP API, not REST API, right? So all the pro developers who are there in the meeting, just remember one thing. SOAP API means a little bit difficult, right? Because you need to know and understand the SOAP envelope, etc., etc. So for that scenario, I'm going to go ahead and show you how did I use Azure Functions. But before that, I guess I'm running out of time because it's already 40. So let me go back to my Azure. Where is my Azure? So there's first question, I guess. Nandeep, can you just tell me the question? Because
Yeah. So this question is from Jyoti Ranjan on
Mhm.
when it comes to Visual Studio, are still the assembly references are limited for a
No,
connector,
no,
or we
no.
can leverage all other assembly references as well?
You can reference anything. So that is what we are going to do in the next session. Forget about assembly references. We are going to use a SOAP API and create proxy classes from it. Okay, it's going to be so powerful when you go ahead and use Azure Functions. First, it was very limited, but now it's not limited. You're getting powerful with Azure Functions. So the good question. Thank you for asking. And yeah, I'm going to show you that. So if you see now, uh, it's going ahead and hitting my Azure functions instead of that. At this point, I can click here. I can click and say save as, and I can save it as a JSON file. I can go back to my Power Automate. I can start creating a custom connector from an API file. Okay, I'm talking a little bit fast because I just realized that I might go over time. So custom connector, and I can create it from an API file. I can go ahead and import my Swagger from here, and I can say function extract. Sorry. So I messed up one thing. So open API file. I'll again do it. So this one. In fact, I should not go ahead and panic because if I panic, I go ahead and do things wrong, and then I need to do it once again. So this is all filled. If you see the host is filled, this is hitting my Azure. This is open API, so no authentication. That's not what I wanted to do because I need to go ahead and I have commented this code. I want to actually have authentication and I wanted to show you how the authentication works. So let me try to quickly republish it. So basically the idea is the same. Go ahead and import the Swagger file and you'll have an action being exposed. And when you have an action being exposed, you can go ahead and use it in your you can use it in your Power Automate. Now, I hope this thing is clear to all of you because it's very important for me to understand that you are understanding things. It's more of a training session as well, if you call my sessions. I like to educate users rather than just go through everything. So it seems to be successful. 39. No, it's 39. It's 43. So I'll publish it again. I'll again save the Swagger because it's important to show you how the API key also comes into the picture. While that's happening, it should be quick. So if I go here, if I want to find the API key for my function, I can click on functions. I can click on function here. And this is the key that I can pass in to go ahead and authorize my connection. Okay, this is very important. So this is getting published. So in addition to that, there is one limitation. Okay, I spoke about being powerful, being very powerful. When it comes to Azure functions, if you're going ahead and running LRO, what we call as long running operations, the limit for Azure is 230 seconds. Okay, so what happens if you have an LRO process? So if you take if you have an LRO process which takes more than 230 seconds, your function will crash. Now, the workaround for that would be to go ahead and use something known as durable functions. Perhaps if you use durable functions, you can go ahead and use it. So I refreshed my screen and now I see the security definition out here. So I need to save this file. And I need to go back to my Power Automate. So just losing on screens. Form open API file. I'll just see the Swagger editor, maybe just create the connector. For now, let's see if it saves, if the demo gods are happy with me. So once this connector goes ahead and saves, you can already imagine what it's going to do. So I'll just go back and to save up some time while that's getting created. It created successfully. I'll just create a quick flow, maybe an instant flow, manual flow, create flow, test. Let's see if my custom connector is out here. It's not there because I have not tested it. Oh my God, I'm just panicking because I'm going out of time, but I need to create a connection. So let me get the API key. So if at all you stumble across a scenario where you don't see your custom connector, it's because the connection is not created. And because the connection is not created, you'll not see the connector out there. Okay, so that's one of the reasonings. I've seen people asking those questions in the community forum as well. So that's a good thing to know. So I'll go back here. I'll paste in the connection API key. If this is all good, it should work. Create a connection. I'm not sure why it's going to a different screen, but yeah, refresh. Uh, Now let me just go ahead and type in something and type in Clavin at the rate gmail.com. I told you I have fat fingers, so bear with me. Test operation. Yeah, it returned me a response, so that's cool. It's working. So I'll just go back once, create a new flow, instant flow, this, click here, custom, and now my custom code connector is out here. And if I pass in some string with the API key, I should go ahead and get those things out. So it's as simple as that. You have created and deployed your custom connector within few minutes. Now, the third topic, the real life scenario that I was talking about. The scenario is something like this. We have a 13 minutes, so that's good. So as I told you, this is the SOAP API that I'm talking about, right? This is deployed on an Azure VM. Now, SOAP API is very difficult to be going ahead and used. Uh, I'll come back to the question in a bit because I'm in sync with this. So when I go ahead and use this, now I lost sync a bit. So this is the SOAP API that you can use, right? When you have a SOAP API, you have a WSDL. The WSDL goes ahead and exposes few operations. The operations can be invoked using a SOAP envelope or by generating proxy classes, right? Now, all the professional developers in this particular meeting will relate to what I'm telling, right? It's very difficult to go ahead and use SOAP API directly in a Power Automate. And this is where the function can stand out for you. In addition, you can also create functions to go ahead and use For example, getting data from a SQL or maybe a legacy system you can, which is hosted up there in Azure maybe. So what I'll do is that I'll quickly create a connection. I'll create one. I'll just show you how to create proxy classes. Function app 2. So that's fine, I guess. Maybe I'll give it a different name just to be sure. That's fine, I think. So create open API, that's fine. And let me just go ahead and open it in Visual Studio. Okay, so the same function is out here. Now, what I'm going to show you is creating proxy classes, right? So creating proxy classes. Now, there was a very good question which said third party can be used. Yes, they can be used. You can import a NuGet package. If at all there's no NuGet package as well, in our case, this is what you can do. That is, click on add. And if you have something like a SOAP API, click here, service reference, WCF, next. Now here I need to pass in the URL. So I need to get the URL. That's the first thing. So let me go to the browser. Let me go here. Let me go back to home. Let me go to SOAP. Uh, so this is it. Or let me just copy it from here. I'm getting a little bit out of sync, but that's fine, I guess. Okay, it's not copied. Let's do it nicely. Copy. Come on, you go away. This usually comes in between and it goes ahead and hides my console, but I'll try to just minimize it some way. And then I'll go back to functions and I'll paste this in and I'll say go. Now this, what it's going is going to the visual. It's picking up the document converter service. And under the document converter service, it's getting all the methods which I can use in my Azure functions. And I can click on next. I don't need additional. I can just click on finish. Now, while this is being compiled, this is how the architecture will look like, right? We have two VMs, we have a load balancer, we have a function in between. The function exposes an open API, which is indeed used to create connectors, and then we can leverage it in Power Apps or Power Automate. Isn't it good? Isn't it? Do you not feel powerful when you go ahead and do these things? Yes, I feel powerful myself, right? So it's created. So it created the proxy classes. Now I'm going back to the functions. I'm out of time. So just understand this. It's the code is present in the GitHub. If you want to use Muhembi for testing it or for any other reasons, feel free to go ahead and go to our uh, GitHub and use it. There's this particular thing that I'm showing you is also documented on my blog, so everything is there. Just understand that everything is there. You just have to go and use it. So this is the blog. So what I'll do is that I'll copy the code. I have 8 minutes. Okay, I still have 8 minutes, so let me just copy and let me just paste this. Now I'm sure I'm just copying this blindly, so maybe I'll get few errors. I need to change many things, including the namespace. So the namespace is function app2. If I so function app2. I need to also change the service URL. So the service URL would be, I'll copy it from here. Just try to minimize this. Paste this in. And let me just quickly review the code once before I click on save. So this is good, API key authentication and so on and so on. So basically, if you see, I'm using the proxy classes out here by using the namespace service reference one, which we created. And then all the things are coming down from the cloud that is from my server, the convert method. as well as the other operations. And there I can go ahead and click on play, and maybe my custom connector goes ahead and creates without an error in the in the first go. So I think this is pretty much it when it comes to custom connector getting started. There are many more things to go ahead and explore. Okay, so this is just the tip of the iceberg, I can say. And maybe you can go ahead and explore more. This is what it is. So I need to go ahead and authorize it. I cannot go ahead and run it locally as of now because I have got an API key authentication enabled. I needed to go ahead and comment this line out. But yeah, I'm open for questions while this gets saved and while I try to debug it. So Nandip, any questions?
There is just one question. I'm not sure whether you have covered that, but it is from Jyoti Ranjan. Like when it comes to using same connector for different environment, like dev, UAT, or production,
Hmm?
how we will manage the API keys.
Basically, it's an Azure related questions. What we can do is that we can create different Azure functions, or if you're using an app service, you can do the same thing with app services as well. Basically, you can go ahead and swap the slots as well. Or maybe in our case, we have different customers using different environments because this is hosted on Azure VMs, right? So we do not mix and match environments. So in that case, it's basically like you can create additional function keys as well in Azure. I think somebody from Azure Guru can go ahead and answer this, but it's more related to Azure and not related to what the Power Automate. But yeah, I'll try to get this thing. Connect to me on LinkedIn and I'll try to give you an answer there as well. Okay, Jyoti Ranjan? By the way, how many of you are actually professional developers and how many of you are citizen developers? I'm curious to know out here because perhaps professional developers can raise their hands. So we know that, okay, n number of persons are professional developers. So the targeted session actually made was okay. Nandeep is one. I have one hand. Okay. Two, I think. How many? Two? Three. Okay. Jyotiranjan is up. So I was expecting him. Three. Yeah. But even if you're not a professional developer, I hope that I made at least a little sense of how we can go ahead and use Stack, etc. Yeah. Cable is one of them. So uh, I made a little bit of sense of how we can reuse the code. I tried to set up the basics of both the custom code connector as well as Power Automate as well. So I hope that people will go ahead and try to play around with it. Always go ahead and remember, don't try to reinvent the wheel. If you have a connector or something that can be created out of the box, don't create a custom connector. It's a premium license. You don't need it. Don't create it. Only something that is not possible. As I told you, I'm going ahead and invoking a legacy system. SOAP API, yes, that's something good with Azure. Uh, Something that's not possible out of the box, regex, or maybe XML to HTML conversion. That's another thing that I have done on my YouTube channel. So go ahead and look at that video. It's also a beginners level video for custom code connector, the first part of the series. If you want to learn the basics, hello world example, you can also. I did another session for another group. So go ahead and look at that. I'll leave some links in the chat. So I think that's pretty much it. 3 minutes before time. Over to you, Nandip.